Welcome to the Infinite Soul Path, Cosmic Conversations, where we uncover the deeper spiritual journeys of extraordinary individuals. I'm your host, Debbra Lupien, and each week we'll dive beyond the surface to explore what sparks their joy, feeds their soul, and connects them to the infinite, inspiring you to embrace your own boundless path. Today's guest, Linda Lang, is an emotional alchemist, water whisperer, and spiritual healer. She blends energy, intuition, and thought change to release limiting thoughts, unresolved emotions, and stagnant energy to facilitate greater alignment, awakening, and empowerment. Linda is a walking miracle who took a detour through the valley of the shadow of death and miraculously emerged back into the sunshine to continue her mystical journey. And now let's welcome the gifted wielder of the diamond ray, Linda Lang.
Deborah, it's my pleasure to be here with you today and spread some light.
Thank you. That is what we are hoping to do. And you are not only going to spread some light, my dear, you are going to entertain because some of the stories you have are just off the charts amazing. And I know the listeners are going to love that. So, the first thing I want to ask you about, what does it mean to be an emotional alchemist?
That's actually a label my guides gave me because I didn't know how to explain to people the kind of work that I do. And so we know an alchemist changes lead to gold. So one of the services I give is transforming emotion, releasing emotion, shifting mindsets so that we have a different energetic state.
Can you dive into that a little more? Because, those buzzwords, some people know exactly what you're talking about, but not everybody. Shifting the mindset and the energetic states, what does it really mean? Like an example, what is it that you do?
Well, maybe the best way to explain that is to give a personal story, if that's okay.
Sure.
Yeah. Once upon a time, I had a job that was okay. There were some tasks in that particular job. It was an office job, a small office job. There was only me and another woman in this office and the owner. And some of the tasks I really dreaded. And one day it was time to do the task, and I just sat there and I thought, I put it out to the universe, I guess, because I got an answer. I asked how I could bring love into this situation. And it was like magic because my perspective changed like that. All of a sudden, instead of it being like right here, I was pulled back and I could see it from a different perspective. And I could just feel the love that was already there within that task. And that task became my favorite thing to do. I used to avoid doing it and I would maybe do it once every 4 or 5 months. And it transformed so much that I like every 2 weeks, I was like, can I do it? Can I do it? It was such a shift and so automatic. And really, it was about how I was looking at it, the stories I was telling myself, the emotions that that triggered. It kept me locked with the blinders on, thinking that this is the way it is when it could be so much more and so much better than how I had been thinking.
I love that. That is a perfect example because I know a lot of people can relate to that, all of their triggers. And aren't triggers really just an opportunity to find out what's behind it and get healed?
If we choose to use them like that, they can be an immense trigger for transformation.
Awesome. So I know that the people out there are wondering about what I said at the beginning that you've walked through this valley of the shadow of death. So tell us about that story.
Well, it was a long time ago, Deborah. I was 22. I was married. I had a baby, and I was so happy. I actually said to God, the universe source, that my life was perfect and I hope nothing changed. And a week later, I, I had my doctor's appointment and I said, I feel like there's something kind of weird going on behind my knee. And she said, oh, there's a little bit of swelling. So we did some tests, and it turned out to be a very rare and aggressive cancer that they really didn't have a form of treatment that was very effective. Essentially, what they told me is they had to amputate my leg. If they did that, I had a 50% chance of living for 5 years. If they didn't, I'd be dead in a year. And that diagnosis just, first of all, opened up an immense door of fear within me, but it also opened up this mystical and spiritual connection. I had visitations, I had knowings, I had my intuition amplified. I had a recurring dream that guided me not to have the surgery. So I have both my legs, and it's like 40 years later, right? I just walked away from the medical community. I'm not going to say I didn't do anything because I did nurture my body. I took herbs, I exercised, I nurtured my spirit with meditation and spiritual connection with prayer. And I was guided along the path, and here I am today. It is. I do consider myself a walking, talking miracle because of that story.
Yeah, and few of us have had that journey through the valley of the shadow of death and come out the other side.
Especially so young. And the blessing of that, I think, is that maybe you're more open and less set in your ways and more open to possibilities. I just really believed that God provides an answer for everything, absolutely everything. And I was determined to find it.
Yeah. And we have to say, not that this is medical advice and you should always consult a professional about such things, but this is Linda's version of the journey and what she felt through her own divine guidance that did work out well for her. And we are so happy that it did.
And I'd like to second that too, because our paths are all very different. And for another person, maybe their highest soul evolution is through going through the medical system or even passing away. Maybe they've completed what they needed to do here in Earth School, right?
Yeah, it's also very different and individual. So I think when you talk about as a child seeing the spirits, you always knew there was something else beyond what the eye could see, and you were energetically connected. So, in my opinion, you probably brought that forward from past lives. But coming in with all of that knowledge already, don't you think that somehow inflected upon your cancer journey?
I suspect so. Right? I'm sure we're all a product of our past experiences and our wisdom, our learnings, as well as the intention that our soul has for us in this lifetime.
And you went on to go to mystery school to study Huna, shamanism, and I don't even know what all else. So
Well,
I think that that was catalyzed by what you brought with you into this life that led you to those opportunities that in a time when those things were not common.
yeah, in the early 80s, it was definitely not mainstream at all. No internet, really. If you were lucky, you could find an occult bookstore or some type of spiritual bookstore, but it definitely wasn't mainstream. And and yet, you know, I think of my mom who must have had some kind of inkling because when I was 13, she bought me an Ouija board, which is not a typical thing for a mother to buy a 13-year-old, and maybe not a good idea for most people, I would say. And she also bought me a golden ankh, the Egyptian um, cross, which has significant spiritual meaning as well. So it's just really interesting that those two things crossed my path so early.
Well, I'm guessing that was probably part of your pre-birth plan, that you would have an early awakening because you had all of these things that you wanted to learn so that you could bring them to the world. So, what led you to the Huna and the mystery schools? What was your path? How did you find it and then decide this was the journey you were going to take?
I'm going to say totally by accident because there are no accidents, but I had never heard of Huna ever at all. And there was a trainer who came to my city doing I think it was a 4-day intensive workshop. And a friend of mine said, "Oh, I think you'd really like that." And I'd be like, yeah, okay, So I decided to go, and it was so powerful. Huna is amazing for anyone who wants to understand energy more and live in harmony with it. We have rituals that connect us with our higher self, and we literally can put our hands up and feel the higher self and then bring it in, and it's so blissful and peaceful. It's incredible. We have techniques for pulling out emotions, beliefs, all kinds of wonderful things like that. It was in that weekend, well, 4-day, I think that 4-day workshop, that I understood how powerful it was, but I also understood that it was a way of life, and I wasn't ready to commit to that lifestyle at that time. So that was probably 2005. And then in my exploration of modalities, it really opened up shortly in the years after that. And there were so many modalities. And I came across one that really, I'm going to say, shifted my energy field in a not good way. It removed my grounding cord to the earth and connected it to my second chakra instead. It was just kind of crazy. It it changed the way I cared for people, and it just wasn't comfortable, and I knew that I needed some help to kinda get out of that circumstance, and that's when I signed up to go to Huna, so that was the next March. I went for my first trip. I've been there 5 times, and the last time I had 2, I'm gonna call them visions unless they're all-night dreams. The whole night, I had these visions of how the island had given me all that it could give me and how I was complete with Huna, and I'd be like, "But I love Huna," and they'd say, "No, you're complete." And so I know that my studies with that halal are complete, but it really is just a magical journey. And so a word of caution for anybody out there, energy is real. It is real. Your thoughts and emotions are part of your creation, and so are the modalities that we study, the schools of wisdom that we study. They have an energy field, a morphogenic field of their own that we get to tap into. And it's not always clear the quality of the energy when we first step in. So I encourage everyone on their own path to be very cognizant of the shifts within them. Are they supporting life, taking life away? Are they supporting growth, taking growth away? Just be very mindful that the transformations that are occurring are actually helping you become who you want to become and not ego based or some other lower energy based.
Yeah, isn't that always the trick? Figuring out the two. There's probably a lot of people who don't know what Huna is. So could you just briefly tell us what that is?
Yeah, for sure. It is the Hawaiian Mystery School. It's their system of healing and spirituality, uh, ancient. It's what's come through the lineage. So the school I studied with, I believe, was 28 generations back, and they were the kahunas and healers and I want to say divinators, but I don't know if that's a word. But the people who foretold the future
Mhm.
for the king, right? For the king. It's all based on aloha, open heart chakra, connection to um, everything, really, the elements, each other. It's
And is it on
beautiful.
all the islands or just one island?
Each island has its own, I guess, version, I would say. So I studied the big island of Hawaii. That's the Huna that I was involved with.
And did the shamanism work come from the Huna or was that separate?
Partially from that, and partially from some training that I did. Actually, my hypnosis teacher was also a shamanic practitioner. Not He studied under a Native American shaman, but most of the work that we did together would be like taking shamanic journeys and that kind of transformation as compared to some other things that like rituals, things like that. We didn't do that kind of thing. So I
Fascinating.
hope that answers your
A
question.
story about the lady with the hip replacement. What kind of modality were you using with her?
Oh, it was a mixed bag. She's amazing, actually. She was amazing. She's crossed over now. This was probably, gosh, I don't know, maybe like 15 or 20 years ago. She was 82 years old and a church deacon. And I was like way out of her box, right? But she was so desperate. She was waiting for a double hip replacement. She could not sleep. She was in so much pain. She didn't get more than 2 hours of sleep at a time. So if you can imagine, one of her friends suggested she come to see me, and she did. We had 4 sessions together, and what I did for her is what I do for most people when I'm working one on one is read the energy field, feel the blocks, um, and then check into my toolbox because I believe the wisdom's always in the room, right? Check into my toolbox to see which tools in what order to shift that energy. And it was just astounding to me because this woman had one child in her lifetime and she loved her son more than anything. And he died probably in his 30s or 40s. He died like maybe 15 or 20 years before she seen me. So you can imagine all of this grief building up. You couldn't even say his name. She couldn't think about him without bursting into tears. She held so much emotion inside her. And it makes so much sense that the pelvic girdle involved in, childbirth with her only son was holding all that grief. So we did our 4 sessions. I'll say after the first session, she went home and she slept 10 hours straight, got up and had breakfast, and slept for another 2 hours. That's how tired she was. She was astounded. So after 4 sessions, she never needed the hip replacement. It really was amazing. But you see, she was willing to do the work to let it go. I did have to, convince her though, because she did have this belief that holding the grief somehow kept the memory of her son alive. And so we had to do some work on that, but it made such a profound shift for her. And for me as well to see something so physical and so ingrained in the body be able to release and be healed was incredible.
Yeah, and those miracles are happening every day. That is available to people. I kind of feel like too often traditional medicine is giving up and saying, we don't know what to do, just live with it. And there are all these people walking around with this pain and suffering that don't even know they have options in the energetic world. We have many, many tools in our toolboxes. I could imagine you might have even used EFT to get something like that out, although it might have taken longer.
I don't think I did at that time, but yeah, energy, using energy can be pretty quick as
Mhm.
long as the person is willing, like gives permission, and as long as we get cooperation from the unconscious mind, right? Because that's where the magic happens. When the unconscious mind is on board, we can create miracles. Absolutely.
And that's your theme song. You are all about thought change.
That is true because it's made such a huge difference in my life for me. And that would be one of the gifts I would love to leave the world is the ability to open your mind and even just explore other possibilities. Not that you have to, buy into them, but just consider what else is possible. It might surprise you.
Yeah. Well, if what you're doing isn't working, then what have you got to lose by trying something else?
Exactly.
You
And
can't.
that's what that woman did, the church deacon who was just, out of her box, but oh, she was so grateful that she came and had that huge shift. It really improved the quality of her life.
Pain is a great motivator.
Sure is, and that's maybe why we have so much of it in our world, right?
Yes. So tell us about the diamond ray.
The diamond ray is something I became aware of in 2015. I had two synchronicities that made me aware. First, I had won, I guess I'd say a contest. I'd won a reading from a psychic in Sedona who just emailed me a reading, and it was so beautiful, such a beautiful reading. And she's the person who told me that I carried both the diamond ray energy and the triune heart flame energy, which is a really compassionate energy. And at the same time as I had that, um, I had won a gift from a psychic artist where she would draw my spirit guide for me. She is in Australia and she's amazing. And she actually sent me the the beautiful picture. And it was a picture that had all this energy coming into me and radiating out of me. It was a diamond ray. It was amazing. And so once I had that reading from the woman in Sedona, I started to work with it, not really knowing what I was doing. So I was working on myself first. And after I don't know, maybe about 2 months, I started working with the odd client just to see. And I remember the very first client. In about an hour and a half, I channeled this energy 3 times for maybe 30 seconds each time. And in between, we just sat and talked. And it was just palpable. The shift in her was palpable. And she actually went to drive home and she started falling asleep and falling asleep. She finally pulled over and asked her guides, and they told her that this is how they were processing the energy that I used. It was, she saw it like a film spinning super, super fast. And they asked her just to sit for about 10 minutes. And then after 10 minutes, she could drive the rest of the way. Um, without any issues. So she did that. And when she got home, she said, from now on, that's what I want. I want the diamond ray energy. So it was a real testament to the healing power of the energy. And probably about 6 months after I was channeling it and using it and working with it, learning about it, I heard, why don't you remolecularize water? And I was like, there's no such word. Who are you and how do I do that? And I just like knew like that. I just walked over to the kitchen counter, did it. That's it.
It is so amazing. So where do you think the diamond ray comes from? Does it come from an angelic realm, from creator, from somewhere out in the universe?
It's a really interesting question, Deborah. And when you said that, when it said angelic, I got no. When you said creator, I got yes. I
Mm,
can tell you from my Indian palm leaf reading that I'm like at this lightning rod for really intense, high vibration spiritual energy, and that my system can transform it so that it's usable for other people because it's so intense. If you're not kind of wired properly, it's kind of like you might blow a fuse or
yeah.
something, right? So, and that's completely possible. I've known people who've, blown a tooth because we have meridians that run through our teeth, and it's uh, it's fascinating. And for me, it's just of the way I'm hardwired. Right? For me, it's like it's not an issue at all. It's not a difficulty. It's not a challenge. It feels delicious.
Well, you brought all of that energy with you into this lifetime. And we were talking before we started about how a previous life you were a monk in Tibet. It feels to me like there's some kind of a connection there. So you have that wisdom, that understanding, and also the presence to process things like that with that wise perspective.
Yeah, I definitely have an open mind. Really, anything is possible. Really. That's how I look at life, for sure.
But for people out there who aren't quite as far along as you are in your journey, it might be good to check in with their own guide team before they try something like this to be sure that it's wise for them.
Absolutely. We should make we should all make our own choices, right?
Yeah. So, Linda, I have some questions that I'm asking everybody. So, have you ever felt like a visitor to Earth as if you don't belong?
I have often felt like I didn't belong.
And
Often.
where did that take you? Where did you think you might be from?
Not here is mostly what I would say. Not here. I didn't really like look to the stars and look for other planets or look for other dimensions even. It just was a sense of kind of being very different than everybody else and kind of tiptoeing, really, kind of tiptoeing. Because back in those days, I mean, we didn't have as much freedom maybe to express our spiritual side.
Yeah. Some star seeds describe it as like being a visitor in a foreign land where they don't speak the language.
So I would say that I could understand the language, but I didn't understand why they did the things that they did and
Yeah.
how they couldn't see that if they did this and this is what was going to happen and they weren't going to be too happy with this. And it always amazed me, even as a child, like, why are they doing that? Can't they see the repercussions of that? And they couldn't. I think maybe more than another planet, I would say maybe more a different dimension is what feels more
Mhm.
accurate for me.
Fascinating. Thank you. Who's been the most influential person in your life?
Deborah, this is going to sound very arrogant, and I don't mean it in any way, but honestly, I think I have been the most important influence in my life. Often, like not fitting in and doing things that people are like, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? It doesn't make any sense, right? And just having that fortitude and strength and confidence in myself to just know my truth and live my truth.
Yeah, that makes total sense because your path is not the average path and it works for you.
Well, hopefully. Yeah.
What would you say is your raison d'etre?
there's a couple of things here that might be worthy of sharing. The first and foremost, when I had my cancer experience a few days after I was diagnosed, and I had that visitation, and I was shown or taken to this place almost like a near death experience where there was just wave and wave of love for me. So I understand how the fabric of the universe is unconditional love. I totally get it. And one of my goals is to get back there in the body and not just mentally, but actually viscerally be that embodiment of beauty and love and acceptance. And it was just so magical. So that's part of my reason of being. I'm definitely here for a life of service to help shift people when I can, where I can, how I can. But even like aside from the business thing, there's an energy that your presence has. Everybody has a presence, and there's an energy associated with that. And I know I've seen it many times how calming my energy can be for other people, how my voice can just calm them down and help release some of their stress and some of their fears. So just to be a beacon of light is a, the just to be a beacon of light. The interesting tongue slip to say a beacon of life, but just to be a beacon of light really is what really calls to my soul. But in the same breath, I want to explore so much more than just the mundane and know myself better through all of those experiences.
From where I'm sitting, that's what you're doing. So
Mhm.
you're a massive success. And isn't it true when you have the gifts, the wisdom, the awareness, that's sacred. It's like a sacred trust. And I don't want to say obligation, but there is a calling or a drawing to share it.
Yeah, I do think that. I think there's a commitment to service that happens, and it's just who you are, right? It's just who you are.
Yes. And that's perfect. Yeah. So, can you describe a pivotal moment in your life when everything changed?
Well, aside from the cancer experience, which was a totally different
Yes.
change, I'd probably share that time where I connected with that beautiful field of light and love and creator. It was so incredible, Deborah. It was a few days after being diagnosed, and I was crying. It was at nighttime, and I was like, I can't believe this is what I'm doing. Oh my God. And feeling like I don't have any choice in that moment. I was at my sister's just because I needed some space. My son was with my husband, and they were together. My sister lives out in the country, and it was so dark. I literally remember going like this and trying to find my nose because it was so dark, I couldn't sense anything. And in that space, I saw this beautiful golden orb come down through the ceiling, and it stopped right in front of me, and I was like, "What's this?" And then it went up the nose cartilage and into my third eye. In some systems, that would be the upper dantian, right, in martial arts, and that's the center that holds light. But this light wasn't just light, right? It was love, it was energy, and you would be just bathed in this love and feel so protected, and you'd think that's all the love there could possibly be, and then there would be another wave, and there's more love and more love. And you wouldn't think that there could possibly be more, but there was always more and more and more. It was like eternally more. And it just healed my spirit so much and made me aware of other realities that are more real than this one. And I will say that when that sense, because it didn't last, when it dissipated, it really felt like I had been, kicked out of the Garden of Eden. It was tough right afterwards because you just feel so cared for, loved, accepted, nurtured. Nothing you did was judged. You're just loved for who you are and you're part of the whole. And I missed it when I wasn't in that space, that's for sure.
But that's what we all have. We're all connected and we can have that anytime we want. So, did you at some point further on come to that understanding so that you could recreate that?
Oh, totally. I totally have, but I'm going to say, without doubt, I haven't experienced it as viscerally
Okay.
because in that moment, I wasn't in that bedroom. I wasn't here on earth. I was in that light, in that oneness. And even in meditation, when I connect with oneness, it wasn't the same intensity as I experienced when I was 22.
And do you think that there was healing in that orb? Because that would be one heck of a coincidence if it didn't also have healing.
Well, healing for sure for the spirit, for the body, perhaps. I'm going to say not fully because this particular type of cancer I had, this is such a long story. Someday it might be a book, but just to give you a brief synopsis, for some unbeknownst reason, this particular type of cancer created a rash on your abdomen if it was growing. And so I had went to see someone who was a herbalist in kinesiology and, got a concoction of supplements to take and felt a shift right away, but it wasn't in my city. So when I inquired with the company who sold that, they directed me to someone else who didn't use kinesiology and started weaning me off all those products and putting me on different products, and the rash began.
Mm,
So I thought, okay, it's growing, right? What a blessing that it had that really. And so then I learned how to tune into my body to at first through muscle testing and then through sensing the energy of my body and which supplements or which foods would support my body, my physical health, bring me life instead of feeding the disease. And it was a real growth experience, let me tell you.
yeah, that's a transformation that, I don't know, would you say that you're glad you had it, considering?
Absolutely. I would say I'm glad I had it because of the gifts that it gave me, which I'll often say I wish everybody could have the gifts without the struggle and the
Yeah.
fears and the challenge, right?
Yes, absolutely. So, one more question. What is the legacy that you want to leave behind?
It's interesting because I've often been told that I'll leave a legacy. Uh, I'm not exactly sure what it would look like. I think my podcast will be part of my legacy because my intention is to create a library of metaphysical wisdom, spiritual wisdom, mystical wisdom that people who are starting to open up can explore and find what resonates and then go explore more. So that's definitely part of it. And I wonder, I truly do wonder if there'll be another part of the legacy that has to do with healing, transformation, and coming into wholeness because of my connection with the diamond ray and the triune heart flame, because they're both so transformative and delicious energies. I'm open, spirit.
So, definitely the book, because the book needs to encapsulate all of those stories and that wisdom. Yeah.
Yeah, that's I only need more time, right? Don't we all? Don't we all?
Well, I believe that if you claim that you always have more than enough time, that you can cause that to be true.
That is a beautiful reminder. Thank you.
And you are an expert at that. So I know that you can accomplish that goal. So for everybody listening, go to Exploring the Mystical Side of Life and check out Linda's podcast because it is an absolute spiritual archive. It's just beautiful and filled to overflowing with love and wisdom. So thank
Thank
you
you,
for
Debbie.
creating that. So is there anything else that you would like to add?
Hmm. I just feel this real sense of deliciousness and of trust and peace inside. And that's my hope for you that you feel that as well and that that's the energy you radiate and in that radiation attract more, magnify it more, create more from that space.
Thank you.
Been an absolute pleasure.
Coming up on the Infinite Soul Path Cosmic Conversations, Reverend Dr. Elena Skyhawk. Dr. Elena began her metaphysical journey engaging in captivating conversations and encounters with animals and spirits as a small child. With that magical beginning, it's no surprise she's dedicated decades of her life working with the shamanic realm. I'm Debbra Lupien. It's been a joy to guide you on this journey. Until next time, remember, every story is a portal, every journey a lesson. Keep exploring, expanding, and we'll see you in our next cosmic conversation.